What do you think are the greatest contributors to your emotional well-being? It's an important question to consider, isn't it? What makes you happy? It's funny, there's so much talk at the moment about well-being and resilience still. And I feel that the more we use these words, the more they start to lose their meaning. They're complex things. So what do you think are the greatest contributors to your emotional well-being? What does lift your mood? Well, if you're anything like some of the teams I've been working with this week, you'll likely include some fairly predictable things. Time with friends, right? Your relationships, time with the people you love, laughter. Exercise, physical exercise comes up a lot, as does time in nature. It might be engaging in stuff you love, listening to music, reading books, watching movies, perhaps listening to podcasts. Maybe you're creative and you like painting, photography, playing the guitar. And all these things, of course, are really important, aren't they? You may have even seen videos I've done in the past about the importance of your psychological recovery. And I think all of the things I've just listed qualify under that banner. The other way to think about it is the banner of what psychologists refer to as hedonic well-being. I'm sure you know hedonism, the root. Well, hedonic well-being is precisely that, this measure of subjective well-being measured from one moment to the next, right? So how are you feeling right now? What's your level of well-being? And in fact, a lot of the research done on human happiness uses this measure of well-being, right? Your hedonic well-being. For example, if I were to send you a notification at random points throughout the day and ask you to assess how you're doing right now, that gives pretty good data on your hedonic well-being. But I think we often miss out entirely a completely different approach or view of human happiness, human flourishing, and that's your eudaimonic well-being. Because while, of course, it's important that your moment-to-moment experience is characterized by positive affect, you also know, right, how important it is for humans to feel a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, right, a sense of impact, maybe working towards something greater than yourself. Also, we know how good it feels to have this sense of mastery. If you feel like you're developing, you're improving, you're growing your skills. Maslow, I'm sure you know, used the term self-actualization, this idea of becoming the best version of yourself. But I think we so often overlook this whole side of well-being. In fact, if you do a quick search on Google around well-being or wellness, you probably won't have much of this mentioned at all. So I think it's really important not just to understand these two different approaches and components of your emotional well-being, but as you start to reflect, you might start to understand they can even be in opposition to each other, can't they? I don't know what you feel about how it feels to develop and to learn, right? To grow as a person. Isn't it often really difficult and challenging and sometimes frustrating? It is, of course it is. In fact, often by definition. So if you were to be biased towards your hedonic well-being, focusing most on how you feel from one moment to the next, you can see how the cost could be your long-term eudaimonic well-being. You see, there's this fundamental, very useful distinction, isn't there, between understanding the importance of well-being in your life, moment to moment, hedonic, and your well-being for your life, which is more about eudaimonic. So what's the point of this? Well, I wanted you to be more mindful of these different approaches to your well-being. I feel that with social media, with how we use our smartphones, with technology generally, there's a lot of asymmetry pointing towards hedonic. And the cost of that with our compromised attention, this perception that we never really have much time, there's never the time, the attention, or the energy sometimes to invest sufficiently in our eudaimonic well-being. So how could you do that? Well, maybe as you think forward to 2022 and maybe even you start thinking about your goals, maybe include eudaimonic principles here. How can you help others more? How can you have an impact that improves other people's well-being? That's another frame, right? To shift between your well-being, the well-being of others. Also, what are your learning goals for next year or right now? What skills are you developing, and how will you set yourself up so that you do develop yourself and you become ever more likely to achieve this self-actualization, becoming the best person, the best version of yourself?